The sky above Zargon 5 was dark and full of smoke. Lightning flashed in the red clouds. The land was broken and cold, with sharp rocks and frozen winds. This place was never meant for peace, but that's where they brought him. Captain Reed Carter stood alone on the high cliff, waiting for the meeting to begin. He had come to make peace with the alien group called the Drenar. He believed they wanted the war to end. He believed wrong. From the shadows, 3 tall Drenar warriors stepped forward. Their armor was black and sharp, their eyes glowing blue. One of them spoke in a cold voice. "Human, you should not have come," Reed frowned. "We had an agreement." They didn't answer. Instead, they raised their weapons and fired. A burning beam hit Reed in the chest. Throwing him back, he fell, rolling down the cliff, his body hitting the rocks again and again. Blood filled his mouth. His arm bent the wrong way. He crashed into the icy ground below, broken and barely breathing. The Drenar looked down from the cliff, then turned and walked away. They thought he was dead. So did Reed. As darkness closed in, Reed tried to crawl. His hand reached out, but there was nothing but snow and stone. His radio was broken, his suit torn. He whispered, "Not like this." Then, something strange happened. The ground below him began to glow with a soft blue light. A crack opened beneath the ice, and warm air rushed out. Reed slid into it, falling again, deeper into the planet's hidden heart. He landed on soft ground this time, in a large glowing cave. In the center was a floating orb of light. Bright but not blinding, it hummed gently like a heartbeat. Reed's eyes barely stayed open, but the light moved toward him. It floated above his chest, pulsing faster. Then it dropped down into his body. He screamed, but only for a moment. Then everything went quiet. Reed woke up later, warm and breathing easily. His wounds were gone. His suit was whole. He sat up, confused and scared. He looked at his hands. They glowed softly in the dark. "What is this?" he whispered. Inside his mind, a voice answered, calm and deep. "I am Elias, the last of the Star Guardians, and you are chosen." Reed stood, heart racing. He didn't know what Elios was or what it meant, but he knew he wasn't dead. He was stronger, faster, and different. He looked at the ice above, now thin and cracked. He pushed with one hand. The ice exploded upward, and daylight poured in. Reed climbed out, the wind cutting across his face. He looked back at the cave entrance, now covered again in snow. No one would believe what just happened, but he didn't care. The Drenar tried to kill him. They made one mistake. They left him alive. As he walked through the snow, his body felt light. He could see the movement of birds in the sky. He could hear the heartbeat of a creature far away, and inside, he could feel the power waiting to be used. He didn't understand it fully, but he knew this was just the beginning. Back at the Drenar base, the commander smiled. "The human is dead," he said. "We can move forward now." But in the distance, a young scout looked through his scope. He saw a figure walking through the snow, glowing faintly. He dropped the scope and ran to tell his captain. But by then, Reed was already gone, moving toward the stars, toward revenge or something greater. The man they tried to kill was gone. The one who came back was something they could not explain, something they would fear, something that would change the galaxy forever. Reed walked slowly through the snow. His feet left no sound, no heavy steps. The cold didn't hurt him anymore. His breath was warm, even though the wind around him was freezing. He should have been dead, but he wasn't. Something inside him had changed, and he could feel it growing stronger with every step. He reached a high cliff and looked down at the burning wreck of a small camp. Smoke rose into the sky, red against the gray clouds. He could see broken machines and bodies lying still. It was a human mining team ambushed by the Drenar. Again, they struck without warning. Again they killed without mercy. Reed clenched his fist, and the snow under his boots cracked. Inside his mind, the voice of Elios spoke again. "Your anger is strong, but it must be guided." Reed replied aloud. "They killed my people, left me for dead, and burned everything," Elios answered. "I know, But power without control becomes destruction. Reed didn't answer. He simply turned and walked down the slope, toward the smoke, toward the dead. When he reached the camp, he saw a young girl crying near a broken transport. She was no older than 10, hiding behind a crate, covered in dust and fear. Reed knelt beside her, his voice soft. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." The girl looked up slowly, eyes wide. You're glowing," she whispered. Reed smiled gently. "I know, it's a long story." He picked her up and carried her to a safe cave nearby. He started a small fire just by touching the rocks. The flame rose quickly, dancing bright and warm. The girl stared, amazed. "Are you a star wizard?" Reed chuckled. "No, I'm just someone who came back different." She told him her name was Kala, and her parents were miners. The Drenar came without warning, took their crystals, and left everyone dead. Kala had crawled into the broken truck and stayed quiet until they left. Reed listened, his heart heavy. Too many innocents were dying while the galaxy looked away. Later that night, as Kala slept under a blanket of heat stones, Reed stood outside the cave. He raised his hand, and a small orb of light appeared in the air. Helios spoke again. "Your connection to me is growing." Reed asked, "What are we really doing here, Helios?" The voice replied, "We are protecting life, stopping darkness before it spreads." Reed looked at his glowing hand, then at the stars above. "Can I really stop them?" he asked. Helios was quiet for a moment, then said, "Yes, but not as you are now. You must learn to shape the power, not let it shape you." "Then teach me," Reed whispered. "I'm ready." And so began the training. In the days that followed, Helios guided Reed through the ways of energy and force. He learned to see the invisible lines that connected life. He could move stones with thought, sense danger before it came, even heal small wounds with the touch of his hand. But every lesson came with a warning. Use it to protect, not control. Use it to save, not destroy. One evening, as Reed practiced in silence, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. A vision struck him hard, an image of a city in flames, people running, Drenar ships above, then a scream, loud and full of pain. It was Kala's voice, crying out. Reed fell to his knees, breath shaking. "What was that?" he gasped. Helios replied, "A future that may come if you do not stop them." The next morning, Reed told Kala they had to leave. He helped her pack what little she had, then carried her through the frozen lands. They reached a nearby human outpost in the hills. Reed gave Kala to the guards, told them to keep her safe. The guards looked at him, shocked. "You're Captain Carter?" "You're supposed to be dead." Reed gave a tired smile. "Not dead, just ... changed." As he turned to leave, one of the guards whispered to another, "Did you see his eyes?" "They glowed." "Yes," said the other, "like fire from the stars." Reed didn't stop. He had no time for questions. The Drenar were getting stronger, but now, so was he, and soon they would learn the truth. The human they thought was dead was coming back, not for revenge, but for justice, and nothing could stop him now. The sky above Rinner Prime, the Drenar capital world, was filled with warships and dark storm clouds. Inside the great throne tower, Commander Exer stood near a glass window, watching the horizon. His claws clicked against the steel floor as he turned to his generals. "The ghost is coming," he growled. "This time we end him." Outside the city, hidden among the tall metal hills, Reed Carter stood with Silas, Yuri, and Kala. He looked up at the tower that ruled over the stars. His eyes glowed brighter than ever. "This is where it ends," he said. Helios whispered in his mind. "You are ready." Silas checked his gear. "The signal jammers are set. We just need to get you inside," Yuri added. "Once the core is shut down, their fleet will lose control." Reed looked at Kala. "Stay here, no matter what happens." She grabbed his hand, her eyes shining. "Come back, promise me." He knelt and smiled. "I promise." Then Reed turned toward the enemy city. The ground trembled as his feet touched the soil. With each step, the glow around him grew. Drenar's soldiers spotted him and opened fire. But the blast stopped in the air, floating like sparks before fading away. Reed raised his hand, and the road ahead cracked open, sending enemies flying back. The city alarm rang loud, but it was already too late. Reed moved through the streets. Like lightning, doors exploded open. Weapons melted in his path. Nothing could stop him. People on both sides watched in awe. Many dropped their weapons, afraid to fight. Some even whispered, "He's not a man, he's something more." Inside the main tower, Exer waited with his strongest warriors. He grinned, holding a weapon. "Made from ancient tech. This time, he won't walk away," he said coldly. Reed burst into the throne room, energy crackling around his body. Exer fired first, sending a dark red beam toward him. Reed caught it midair, eyes glowing with blue fire. Then he threw the energy back, breaking the throne apart. The room shook, metal walls bending from the power between them. They clashed in the center, fist against claw, light against shadow. Each strike sent waves of force across the planet. Helios guided Reed's movements. But it was Reed's heart that gave him strength, not just power but purpose. Exer roared and slammed Reed into the wall. "You are alone," he hissed. "No one will follow you." Reed stood up slowly, breathing hard. "No," he said, "I'm never alone." At that moment, Silas and Yuri disabled the power core. Across the skies, Drenar's ships fell from formation, systems failing. The tide had turned. Reed faced Exer once more and whispered, "This is for every life you broke." With one final strike, Reed sent a beam of pure light through Exer's chest. The commander fell, and the room fell silent. Outside, Kala saw the tower go dark. She smiled and whispered, "He did it." Reed stepped out as the sun began to rise behind the broken city. The people watched him in silence. He raised one hand not in attack, but in peace, and the crowd began to cheer. Drenar, humans, and others alike, they had seen the end of a tyrant, and the rise of a new kind of hero. Weeks later, across the galaxy, peace talks began for the first time in years. No side claimed full victory, but something had changed. People now believed in unity, not because of the council, not because of fear, but because of one man, one flame in the dark. Reed stood on a small hill, watching stars move slowly in the sky. Kala walked up beside him, holding a small plant. "It's growing," she said with a smile. Reed nodded. "Just like the galaxy, finally." Silas called from the ship. "We've got another message. Some colony asking for help." Reed turned to Kala. "Ready for another trip?" She laughed and nodded. "Always." As the ship lifted into the air, its lights cut through the clouds on the ground below. Someone had carved a simple symbol into the stone, a circle with a flame inside it, a reminder that they tried to kill the human. But he returned stronger, wiser, and with a power they never understood. Not just the power of light, but the power of hope. The sky above Astrophor burned with red fire. The Drenar had come again, this time with more ships, more weapons, and more fear. They had already taken the central city and captured over 2,000 miners. But what they didn't know was that Reed Carter was already there, watching, waiting, and listening. From high on a tower's broken roof, Reed looked down at the enemy camp. Guards stood at every corner, their rifles glowing with heat. Prisoners sat in lines, heads down, too tired to cry. In the middle of it all stood a large glowing machine. Reed narrowed his eyes. "What is that thing?" he whispered, inside his mind. Helios spoke, calm but firm. "They are harvesting life energy, turning fear into fuel." Reed felt sick. "They're using people like batteries." "Yes." Helios replied, "This must be stopped." Reed looked at his hands, already glowing softly. Then he stepped into the night, walking straight toward the camp. Silas and Yuri watched from a distance through binoculars. "He's going alone again." Yuri whispered, "He always does this." Silas replied, "And somehow, he always comes back." At the edge of the camp, Drenar guards saw movement. They raised their weapons, shouting in their language. Reed didn't run. He lifted one hand, and the ground beneath their feet exploded with blue light. The guards flew backward, screaming as their rifles turned to dust. Reed walked forward slowly, eyes burning bright, cloak flowing like fire. Panic spread across the camp. Drenar commanders shouted orders, towers opened fire, but the energy bolts bent away from Reed's body like wind against stone. He raised both hands, and a wave of light spread out, disabling machines, unlocking cages, and breaking chains. Prisoners stared in shock as their cuffs fell apart and gates swung open by themselves. Some cried, others ran, but all of them whispered the same name, the Ghost. At the heart of the camp, the giant machine started to glow red. It was overloading, reacting to the strange energy Reed carried. Suddenly, the ground shook and the machine cracked open. A wave of red energy blasted toward Reed. He stood his ground, eyes wide, hands raised. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then Elios whispered, "Now!" Reed shouted, and a pillar of blue fire shot up from the ground beneath him. It met the red wave in the air, and the sky above turned purple and white. The blast sent shockwaves across the valley, tearing the camp apart. When the light faded, the machine was gone, turned to ash, and Reed stood in the center of a giant glowing circle, untouched. The prisoners began to cheer. Silas and Yuri rushed in, guiding people to safety. One of the rescued miners ran to Reed and asked, "Who are you?" Reed looked at him and said softly, "A man who came back different." News of the attack spread faster than ever before. Videos from old cameras showed blurry images of the explosion. The glowing man, the falling towers. The Human Council held an emergency meeting. Many were afraid. "He's too powerful," one leader said. "What if he turns on us?" another added. "We don't even know if he's still human." The council voted to send a capture order. Reed Carter was now a galactic-level threat. Meanwhile, in a cold, dark ship, Commander Exer watched the footage with silent rage. "He is no longer a soldier," he said. "He is a weapon." A Drenar general asked, "Should we fear him?" Exer replied, "Yes, but we will destroy him anyway." He slammed his fist on the table. "Bring the girl. Make him feel pain. Let's see what his power does then." On a peaceful moon called Yoria, Kala laughed as she played near a tree. She was safe for now, but deep in space, ships were already moving toward her. And when Reed would hear about it, something inside him would burn hotter than ever before. That day on Astrophore, Reed stood on the cliff. Looking at the horizon, Elios spoke gently. "You are growing stronger, but so is the danger." Reed nodded. "Then I'll grow faster." His hands sparked with energy. "I won't stop," he whispered. "Not until they learn that some things can't be controlled." In the heart of the Human Council's command station, 12 leaders sat around a bright glass table. They looked tired, nervous, and divided. On the large screen in front of them played recordings of Reed Carter walking through fire, destroying Drenar tech, healing wounded people with light. Some called it a miracle, others called it a threat. But all of them agreed on one thing: he was no longer just a man. A woman named Director Lorne, leader of the security division, stood and spoke with a firm voice. "He cannot be allowed to continue. He's acting alone, ignoring all orders." An old man beside her said, "He's winning battles we couldn't." Lorne shook her head. "That's the problem. No soldier should have that much power." They voted in silence. The result was clear: Reed Carter must be captured or eliminated. They didn't send a message of thanks, not even a warning. They sent assassins, silent and trained. A betrayal hidden under orders and signatures, far away. Reed sat inside an old transport ship, eyes closed, listening to the stars. Elios whispered, "They are coming for you." "But not the Drenar." Reed opened his eyes slowly. "The Council." "Yes," Elios said. "Your own people have turned against you." Reed stood up, calm but disappointed. "I saved their worlds, their children, their cities," he said, "and they repay me like this." Silas entered the room. "Got news, boss." Incoming ship just crossed our radar. No ID code, but it's human, Reed nodded. I know, Yuri stepped in too, worried. Is it the council? Reed didn't answer. He just said, keep Kala safe. That's all that matters now. Outside the base, the sky darkened as a black stealth cruiser landed silently. 4 figures stepped out masked, silent, deadly. They carried weapons not used in war tools, meant for quiet killing. Reed watched from the shadows, letting them come closer. He didn't want to hurt them, but he knew he might have to. They entered the main hall, where Silas stood pretending to work on a broken panel. Yuri was beside him, holding a small light tool. The lead assassin raised his weapon. Where is he? Silas smiled. You mean the glowing guy? Then the lights exploded, and everything went dark. Blue light lit up the hallway as Reed appeared from behind. He didn't say a word, just raised his hand and sent out a pulse of force. The assassins flew back, weapons flying from their grip. One of them recovered fast and fired. Reed caught the bullet in midair with glowing fingers. You don't need to die, Reed said softly. You're just following orders. But one of them pulled out a small red device and pressed it. A sharp pain hit Reed's chest. His body froze. Elio shouted in his mind. They used a disruptor tuned to our energy. Reed dropped to one knee, shaking. His glow faded, and the assassins rushed forward. Suddenly, a small figure jumped from the hallway. Kala, holding a stolen flash grenade. She threw it with all her strength, and it exploded in bright white light. The assassins fell back, screaming, blinded. Yuri ran to Reed and pulled him out, Silas covering them with a stolen blaster. They escaped through the back, finding cover behind the ship. Reed was weak but alive. Kala held his hand tight, crying, They were humans. Why are they trying to kill you? Reed looked into her eyes. Because I became something they don't understand. And people fear what they don't understand. Silas added. Reed took a deep breath, the glow returning slowly to his skin. They sent hunters, but forgot one thing, he said. I've already been hunted once. And I survived, Elios whispered. You are adapting. The energy is becoming part of you now. Reed stood up, stronger again. Then it's time they see who I really am. Back in the council station, Director Lorne received a message. The assassins had failed, and Reed had escaped again. She slammed her hand on the table. He won't stop, and now he knows we tried to kill him. Another officer spoke. What if he turns against us? Lorne looked coldly at the stars through the window. Then we better hope the Drenar finish him before he finishes us. That night, Reed looked up at the stars from a quiet cliffside. His hands glowed not with rage, but with purpose. They feared me, he said. But I only ever wanted peace. Kala sat beside him. Will you still help them? Reed paused, then said, I'll help the people, not the leaders. The war wasn't over, and the hardest choice was still ahead. But Reed had made a promise to protect the innocent, no matter the cost, even if it meant standing against his own kind. 3 months passed since Reed Carter had disappeared into the snow of Zargon 5. The galaxy had changed in that short time. The Drenar expanded their control, capturing new planets and mining stations. Many human outposts had fallen, while others surrendered without a fight. Hope was fading, and people started to believe that humans could never stand against the Drenar again. But something was stirring in the shadows. A whisper, a name, a rumor. They said someone had destroyed an entire Drenar patrol with no weapons. They said he moved like light and vanished like smoke. Some called him the Ghost. Others said he was a myth. But those who were saved knew the truth. He was real. And he was angry. Reed stood on the edge of an old human outpost called Station Harlan. It was small, broken, and nearly forgotten. He wore a dark cloak to hide his face, and glowing eyes. He didn't want attention, not yet. He needed information first. He walked into the main market quietly, passing tired faces and empty stalls. The people looked scared, hungry, and hopeless. A large screen flickered near the center of the market. A message from the Human Council played again and again. Stay calm, stay united, help will come. But no one believed it anymore. Reed watched silently, his jaw tight. The council had done nothing while people died. They were scared, just like everyone else. But fear wasn't enough anymore. Action was. He moved through the alleys until he reached a back door. It was the place where he once trained young soldiers. Now it was dark and cold inside. He walked. Slowly, remembering every step, every laugh, every lesson. He reached a dusty wall and found the old memorial board. On it were names of soldiers who had died in action, and near the bottom, he saw his own name, Captain Reed Carter, here on Zargon 5. He stared at it for a long moment, then whispered, "I'm still here." Behind him, a voice spoke. "If you are, then the council needs to know." Reed turned quickly, hand glowing with blue fire. But he stopped. It was Lorna Vale, one of his old students, now a leader at the station. She stepped forward, shocked by the light in his hand. "Reed, is it really you?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "I survived, but I'm not the same." They sat and talked. And Reed told her everything about the Drenar betrayal, the cave, the orb called Elia's, and the power inside him. Lorna listened. Eyes wide, her hands shaking, she believed him. Because she had seen the same mark, the glowing circle with the flame left at destroyed Drenar bases. "You've become something else," she said. "More than a man." Reed shook his head. "No, I'm still me, just upgraded." Suddenly, loud sirens echoed through the station. Lorna jumped to her feet. "Drenar raiders." Again, Reed stood too, face calm. "I'll handle it," he said quietly. Outside, Drenar warriors stormed the streets, pushing people and stealing food supplies. Their leader laughed loudly. "Humans are weak. Give us what you have." A boy screamed as one of the Drenar raised his weapon. But before the shot fired, a blast of blue energy hit the ground. Everyone froze. Reed stepped out from the shadows, his eyes glowing bright, his hands crackling with light. The Drenar aimed their weapons, but he moved like wind. He raised one hand, and their rifles melted in their hands. Another wave of his hand sent them flying through the air. The crowd gasped in shock. The boy who had screamed looked up at Reed and whispered, "He's the ghost." The Drenar leader tried to run, but Reed was faster. He blocked the path, his voice like thunder. "You burned my people. Now it's your turn to feel powerless." The alien dropped his weapon and begged, "What are you?" Reed looked down at him and said one word, "Human." With the raiders gone, the people of Station Harlan gathered around him. They asked questions, cried, and cheered. Hope returned to their faces. Lorna stepped beside Reed and said, "You just became the most wanted man in the galaxy." Reed smiled faintly. "Let them come." That night, a small ship flew from Harlan Station. Red was aboard, heading for the next Drenar zone. He left behind a glowing mark on the wall, the circle with the flame, and with it, a message scratched into the steel. "The ghost lives, you will not hurt us again." In the far corners of the galaxy, people began to whisper again. They spoke in hushed voices about a figure covered in shadow and fire, a man with glowing eyes and hands full of light. They called him many names, the ghost, the flame, the returned, but no one knew who he truly was. Only a few remembered the name Reed Carter, and fewer believed he was still alive. On the planet Draven 9, a Drenar prison camp held over 500 humans. The air was thick with ash and the sun never shone. Guards marched day and night, their boots loud on the metal floor. No one smiled. No one spoke unless ordered to. It was a place of silence and suffering. One night, the ground shook gently. A soft blue light passed through the fences, almost like wind. Guards raised their weapons. Confused, then, without warning, the control tower exploded in silence. No sound, just fire and falling steel. The power grid failed, and the prison lights went out. In the darkness, something moved fast. Too fast to see, too fast to stop. When the backup lights turned on, every human was standing free. Every cell door was open, and a glowing mark burned into the prison wall, a circle with a flame inside it. From orbit, Satellites captured blurry images of the figure walking away from the camp. The next day, all over the outer systems, people watched the news in shock. Unknown force frees prisoners from Drenar camp. No casualties reported, attackers unknown. But many already knew who it was. The ghost had struck again back. On Vanna Prime, Reed sat quietly in the basement of an old temple. He stared at the walls, now covered with star maps and coded transmissions. He was not alone anymore. 2 others had joined him, a former tech officer named Silas and a medic named Yuri. Both had seen his power and chose to follow. They didn't understand it, but they believed in what he was doing. Silas typed quickly on an old console. Drenar movement detected near Astrophore. Looks like another mining raid, Reed nodded. That's their 5th in 2 weeks, Yuri frowned. They're gathering something, but it's not minerals. Reed closed his eyes, focusing his mind. A faint image came, dark shapes, red energy, deep underground chambers. They're building something, he said slowly. And it's not just weapons, suddenly. A knock echoed through the hidden base. The 3 jumped, weapons ready. A voice called from behind the door. Don't shoot, I bring news. They opened the door carefully. An old woman stepped in, wearing robes covered in dust. I saw your mark in the prison, she said, her voice shaking. You are him, the one they fear. Reed didn't answer. She stepped forward, eyes full of tears. They killed my family, but you gave us hope again. Thank you, Reed looked down, not used to praise. I didn't do it for thanks, he said. I did it because no one else would. The woman nodded. That's what makes you different. After she left, Yuri whispered, You're becoming more than a soldier now. Reed didn't respond, but deep inside, he knew it was true. He had started as one man seeking revenge. Now he was becoming a symbol, a light in the darkness. But symbols were dangerous too. The Drenar were searching for him, and the human council was growing afraid. The next night, a secret meeting took place inside a hidden Drenar ship. Alien generals stood around a glowing table, showing images of Reed. One said, He cannot be allowed to spread. He must be destroyed. Another replied, We tried to kill him, and he came back stronger. A third said in fear, Maybe he is not human anymore. They all turned to their leader, a cold-eyed warlord named Commander Exer. He leaned forward, claws tapping on the metal table. Then we find his weakness, and we crush it, he said. Start with the girl. Far away, in a safe zone on a human-controlled moon, Kala, the little girl Reed saved, was living quietly. She drew pictures of the man with glowing eyes, her star guardian. But danger was now moving toward her, and Reed would soon face a test. Greater than any before, not one of power, but of heart.